Andrew Polfer, the one and only. My man.
What a time to be alive, right?
What a time, what a time, what a time indeed.
They didn't tell me it'd be like this.
Polf, Andrew, the Andrew Polfer, the Polfinator. A lot of our 910 students probably know who you are mainly as the drummer in T6P6.
Oh, yes.
Fireside chats. Maybe even have a drumstick or two of yours as you. Did you throw them out into the crowd? Did you do that?
Every time I get the chance to, I throw something in the crowd.
I love it. Worst drummer, Polfer's Corner, T6P6 drummer, Edge pastor venue, Edge worship leader, father, husband, lead singer in Love Light. What else am I missing? These are all the titles of Andrew Polfer.
Well, I've recently become a chef at my home.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
So,
Boyardee.
First of all, I just want to say thank you, Austin, for having me on, and all of you 910ers out there. You know, hopefully you're doing well. Much love to you, and it's an honor to be on the program.
Hey, yo. Hey, it's an honor to have you, my friend. Thanks for taking the time to be with us tonight. This is awesome. Polf, probably one of our first interactions. You did a summer at Hume Lake Christian Camps as the band up there, Love Light. You and your wife, your lovely wife, who sings at the Jordan with you occasionally. Does she sing in the Edge with you?
She does about once a month.
Okay, that's awesome. And there they are. Wow. You can kind of see me. It kind of looks like I'm in that photo because of the reflection.
Like Zoom Inception.
Yeah, that's good. But you worked up at Hume a summer while still working at North Coast Church. Is this accurate?
This is true.
Walk me through that schedule, because I think anytime I think, man, I'm tired or I feel burnt out, I quite literally think about your schedule that summer, and it makes me feel less tired.
Well, I do believe that the summer took some years off of my life. So a 10-week long program at Hume Lake for the summer camp at the time. And so the program runs Sunday night through Saturday morning. So, and we do worship probably 2 to 3 times a day, whether it be a concert or a worship for one of the main sessions or early morning worship or what have you. But we'd go all the way until Saturday, where we'd get to sleep in, and then I'd drive down to San Diego, which is, how far of a drive is it, Austin?
I don't know, like 7 hours if there's no traffic, if you're lucky.
Yes. And so I would do that and come play worship on Sunday morning at the Fallbrook North Coast campus. Shout out to Fallbrook.
Hey, yo.
Joshua Saison's the man.
I wish I had some like sound effects, like a soundboard over here. I was like,
maybe
be the perfect moment for it. Yeah, in post-production. Maybe you could do that for me, Tanner. Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And after worship, we'd get in the car and drive back to Hume Lake 7 hours. We did that probably 8 out of the 10 weeks. And
that is bananas. It is absolutely bananas. You were driving like 14 hours a weekend and playing at a camp all week and then coming and playing. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Absolute craziness.
It's bananas. We did that for 2 summers.
Yeah, so like you finished one summer and then you got to the next summer and you're like, that was a good idea. We should do it again. Jeez.
Well, I do have a bit of crazy in me.
Yeah. Hey, it's all the best people do.
Also, I have a pin here to take notes if we're gonna
just in case I start spitting. I start spitting fire and you just go, hold on, I need to write that down.
FireSide chats.
Just like a lyric pops into your head, something like that. That's good.
Well, co-writes. Get a third. No, say a word, get a third. That's one of the principles in songwriting.
It's good. Hey, for all my songwriters out there, you already know. Polf, you and I have enjoyed quite a few meals together. I would consider you like a bit of a foodie. You like your spicy food. You're a maniac. Isn't that part of your like staying healthy mantra? The spicier, the healthier.
Well, I think if you're not sweating as you eat your food, that's a really gross phrase. If you're not sweating as you eat your food, you're doing it wrong.
Mm,
If you're
mm,
like looking all cool and collected, like that's,
it's good. I had a cauliflower mac and cheese tonight, and I
oh,
sprinkled some cayenne pepper on just for you.
good for you. Yeah, at a Thai restaurant, I feel like another one of my sayings is that every every food every food opportunity is a food challenge. And so I'm coming up with that now. It sounded like I was going to
It's
set up
good.
something,
Yeah. That's right up
but
there with like every kiss begins with K. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. That's good. And so when I'm at a Thai place, for some reason, this is how my mind works. When they ask me how spicy I want it, I feel like they're challenging me every time they
Mm,
ask that question. Like, how spicy do you want it, white kid?
mm,
And I'm like,
yeah.
ooh, however you like it. Give me
Mm,
the hottest kind. And they laugh and they'll go in the kitchen and they don't believe me, but I want them to bring out whatever they're like and in their heat scales.
yeah. It's true. I do kind of feel like they challenge because every time I say spicy number 3 or 4 if I'm feeling dangerous, I kind of hang my head immediately after. Like
I
it's
know
like
how it makes me feel when
I'll go
somebody orders
like
that.
spicy number 3. Like I legit I feel like bits of shame right
Yeah,
there when I
that's
say
like
that. But
asking for ketchup.
true. You're like, can I get some ketchup? If you're at like a nice restaurant. Yeah, I get that. So what are like what are a few restaurants you miss because of COVID-19 quarantine? Like obviously
Oh
you can still do dine out and all that, but it's just not the same.
no,
What
it's
are
not.
what are a few that you miss?
So I love Indian food. Also,
Ooh,
another spicy food. There's this place called Punjabi Tandoor in Carlsbad.
okay.
They go away once a year for a whole month to visit India, where their family has weddings and stuff. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing over there, but they
Dang.
leave for a month, and they left right in this COVID time. So I hope they come back
Yeah.
because, uh,
I don't know.
yeah,
We don't know what we'd do without them.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Dang. Punjabi Tandoori.
Yeah, well, close.
Okay. I'm gonna look it up. I've been meaning to find a good Indian restaurant. My mom grew up in Pakistan, so I grew up eating
Oh,
like Pakistani food, but she would have to like dumb it way down. Like
with
the
the curry,
her spicy level is
okay.
you would like her cooking. It's phenomenal. But
Also,
um
Board and Brew is the best sandwich on planet Earth.
whoa,
So
bold
yeah,
statement.
yeah. Well, they got this little sweet and sour sauce that I don't know what they put in there, but it's good.
Dang. Yeah. No, I do like Board and Brew. They make some good sandwiches. So we've been talking to a fair amount of musicians, ironically, either between 9-10 in the morning or some of these fireside chats. And I feel like musicians kind of have a hand up on the rest of us during quarantine because you guys are kind of used to locking yourselves in and creating genius. And I've witnessed it, like some of the stuff you've put out for the Jordan, the Good Friday service, golly was so stinking good between you and Christopher and kind of the music you put out there. Like has there been musical genius that has struck during quarantine, or does it feel like same old, same old?
Well, I think so where we live, we call it Polf Tower, and we have this whole little spot that's set up for music, and I didn't get to use it in the same capacity that I was in my current routine of North Coast. I feel like sometimes the routine of work becomes like a vortex where all of your creativity gets siphoned in a particular spot. So just kind of being around this space and being around music always being set up kind of creates an environment where if I have an idea upstairs, I come down and I play it out and
Yeah.
see if it's good. Also, I think like there's a drive in me to be able to produce content since we're not being able to meet in a space together. I miss that so much. And so this
Yeah.
is a way for me to hopefully, reach out and hopefully have some sort of relationship with those that I love to enjoy worship with.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know it's been so cool to hear that personally. And, my wife and I playing your stuff and with the Jordan, just being able to still worship. And I love the content you and your wife are putting out or you and your teams
Cool.
that you've put together. It's
Appreciate
been
that.
Yeah, it's been huge for us and as a church as well. So that's been cool.
Yeah.
This is probably one of my favorite questions to ask right now. In full sincerity, I stole it from one of my best buds, John Tunger. He actually works up at Hume. He's a camp director up there for San Diego and Hume Kauai. How is that even a thing? You know what I'm saying? But the question is, what's your superpower? And
Oh.
not in the sense of like, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? But like, what does Andrew Polfer offer a team or an organization or, North Coast Church, the Jordan, that's unique? Like, what is Andrew Polfer's superpower that when you step onto a team, this is what you bring?
So that's a good question.
It
Good.
is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
Compliments to the chef of the question,
Right.
and also the sous
Boyardee.
chef that brought it to my attention.
I will be John Tunger's sous chef any day of the week.
But the I think the idea of this time also brings to attention, like the question you just asked before this, is that I believe that worship is permanent. That's something that was happening before you and I had any breath. Worship was going far beyond that in the early church, as well as,
Mm,
God has designed his people to bring him adoration. And so that's changing. Every season, every moment in history has its own soundtrack to worship. And I believe that's supposed to be shifting. Our soundtrack is supposed to always be a reflection of our culture and the art that is happening within the people of that culture. But worship and the point of our adoration stays the same. And
mm,
so in this particular time, I feel a challenge as a worship leader and as a creative to adjust and to be like, okay, what is the soundtrack of the church right now? And
mm.
so for if I do have a superpower, it's that consistent challenge in my own life to not get stuck doing the same thing. The purpose is always the same, the reason is always the same, but our tools, they're going to be shifting as culture shifts, as time shifts. We're supposed to be on the forefront of art, not just reacting to whatever popular music is, but actually be the ones who are the troubadours that are going and setting a tone. And so I hope that's something that I bring.
Yeah, man, that's
And
so
so
cool.
hopefully I also have a little sense of recall where I can remember songs that I heard not too long ago. It's like I don't know if it's a superpower or is a stupid human trick, but it's
Yeah. Plus golden pipes, that's a part of the spicy food of staying healthy so those golden pipes can produce, you know
oh
what I'm
man, I
saying?
hate getting
But
sick. I
ah,
tell you what, that germ epidemic is a little tough for germaphobe. I tell you what.
I tell you what. Man, that's so cool though. I feel like coming to North Coast, my appreciation for worship has changed so much and worship music in general. And I feel like that so much of that is credit to you and guys like Jake Lambrisi and so many others. If I were to start naming them, it would be a ridiculously long list. But I feel like you really are one of those people that's at the forefront of pushing the envelope at North Coast and making sure that they're always staying sharp and that constantly trying new things, especially at the Jordan, and just such a rad young adult ministry to be a part of I just feel like I'm always hearing something new, and you really do push North Coast forward in a really cool
Oh
way.
man, that means a
And
lot.
yeah, it's cool. This is another kind of one of my favorite questions before we dive into some of the more serious things, but um what are two misconceptions of Andrew Polfer? And I again play sous chef on this one to the chef, Derek Gear.
Oh,
So a mutual friend of ours,
oh,
the
misconception.
homie Derek Gear. But yeah, usually it's easy to think of one and it's harder to think of the second one. But when somebody looks at the outside, the shell of Andrew Polfer and like assumes something, what are they often wrong about?
Oh, I think sometimes I have a reputation of being. Uh, so I love to produce music too, and sometimes that makes people a little fearful of my critical ear. And so I have a generous spirit though, and so like even when people are making mistakes on the team in the worship environment, it's like that's totally okay. You know, we're human beings. It's okay to make mistakes, and the purpose is for worship. And so that that uh, that production ear sometimes has gotten me in trouble with volunteers before. It's like, oh, what's he thinking? Is he upset at me? I made a mistake. And
Yeah.
so
You're
like
like, no,
that.
it's totally fine. Just don't let it happen again.
So I do have a funny little story about that. I've come a long way from this story, but the first church I ever had any kind of a position at, I was 20 years old. It's this little church in Upland, California, and it
Mm,
was Easter Sunday. And my wife was singing with me, and we've been doing worship together for as long as we've known each other, maybe 20 years. That's true.
it's a
And
long time.
she's had a beautiful voice the entire time I've known her. I've grown into my voice, and she has been one that has sharpened me. I used to sing so awful. I don't know how she put up with me with how good she is. But she was singing a song on Easter Sunday, and there was a group of vocalists that were singing on like over her, and they weren't singing very good. And I, in a grave mistake, said to those volunteers, "Hey, guys, what if you didn't make so much noise over there?"
Oof.
Whew.
Oof. Yikes.
It's not a good look.
Probably
No.
not the best look.
So they all quit the worship team that day.
No.
And so
No
something
way.
that I'm learning over the years is that a producer also has to be a shepherd in the
Mm,
church. So when you're leading worship musicians and when you're leading in any kind of environment, there's this desire for excellence. But if it's not tampered with actually shepherding the people that are helping you achieve that goal of excellence, then you're doing it wrong. And so I've been on this climbing of that understanding of each time that I have a team every week, you know, to
yeah.
say, how can I serve these people as they serve the church?
Yeah. Well, dang, dude, that's so cool though to see now you doing exactly that of shepherding a group of people that you're also leading into worship, right? You are a worship leader in the Edge, but you're also so much more than that now as the venue pastor of you're leading a group of people and looking out for their lives in such a broad spectrum that includes worship and that includes leading them in worship. That's a cool like full circle story, but can you give me a quick second one?
Second one.
3 hours later.
So I have a peculiar way of speaking, even how I put that now. So like sometimes people misunderstand what I'm saying because I'm saying it in a strange way. And
Mm.
so I don't know what that misconception is. Maybe I'm more bright than I actually am.
just a dull bulb on the inside. One track mind.
Just because it sounds like a poem doesn't mean it's deep.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. I'm not sure I agree with you, but that's fair. Okay. Um, I'm personally curious of this question, and I know a lot of our students are as well. But when it comes to worship, what's on your mind when you're leading worship? Like, what's going on mentally while you are worshiping?
Yeah, so that's such a good question because I feel like if the worship leader isn't engaging in worship as they lead worship, they're just it's like a cover band,
Mm,
which is the worst thing that could be
yeah.
happening at church. For the worship leader not to be engaging with where he's leading the congregation, that's a huge mistake. It's like a teaching pastor not knowing the material as he teaches it. I think it's such a
Yeah.
important thing. And I've heard different people answer this question. I think it
Hmm.
was Brooke Lighterwood that said the metallic taste of sin. She remembers it in her mouth, and it makes her respond out of a grateful spirit every time she leads worship. And
Whoa.
it got me to consider, okay, what is my fuel? And I asked my wife that question, and Jen was like, the bigness of God, the worthiness of God, and this understanding of that worthy God is worthy of whatever I'm about to give him, and so much more. And for me, it's presence-based worship, and believing that the God of Jacob, the God of Adam, the God of David is also the God of you and I. And so we get to share in that moment, in that very place and setting that we're at, to bring worship to our God, who receives it and is present for it and enjoys it. And so for me, that is something that just causes me to worship, and saying that this is actually, this worship has an audience. It's not the people that are there. Hopefully those are participants in that worship for that audience of Jesus, and so that's my fuel, every time that I get up. And it's so important for me to be at that place.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I love doing new songs all the time. Like if I hear something in the car on the way to the Jordan, or hear it earlier in that day, and it makes me excited, I'm like, oh, if I'm excited and I'm passionate about this, I know I can lead that way. And so, because I believe we're not just leading out songs, we're leading out like examples. We're leading out examples of what it looks like to be a worshiper of Jesus, and giving people options, whether it be to lift your hands, to sing on the top of your lungs, to whisper these songs as prayers, or to fall to your knees. Like all of that stuff, those are ways that you have been given as multiple choices in a way to engage with our most worthy God.
Dang, that's cool. Okay, so natural follow-up question to that is, what happens when you don't do that? Like, what happens when you don't feel like worshiping? And I think this is probably, more relatable for people like me, who I am like the furthest thing from musical. I played trombone in 5th grade, and have a picture of me sitting on my bunk bed in my boxers to prove it. But yeah, I'm not super musical. I have like a very small range of songs, and I'm like, oh, I can sing in this song. And then if it goes too high or too low, I'm like, oh, I'm out. And so worship through music is more challenging for me, but I North Coast, honestly, if I'm being honest, North Coast Church has been probably one of the first times in my life where I've really leaned into worship through music, and it's changed a whole part of my heart and my relationship with God in a really cool way. But there's plenty of times where I walk into a worship set, or especially being a pastor and being at church all the time, and I can only imagine for you, like, leading worship, there have to be plenty of moments where you battle to remind yourself of the bigness of God, and you don't feel like it, or you don't want to engage, or you're not necessarily like up for the task. Yeah, what do you do there?
Yeah, well, I've loved how you've led your students, and just to see the culture that you've set up there is so encouraging for me, especially as the worship guy for the young adults, to know that you are set an example for those 9, 10, and then on to 11, 12, to know that, like, oh, once they become these Jordan young adult age, I'm so excited to be able to enjoy worship together with those students. So thank you so much for setting that example, and even asking that question, because I think that's important. Worship and music, like, they're tandem, but they're not like mutually exclusive. I believe that worship can exist outside the musical realm, and it's important to, like, the biggest sense of the word worship is like to cast yourself as a living sacrifice unto Jesus, and to forsake all of your idols that were before him. That's the big idea of worship. But corporate praise and the way that we do worship as a community, I think, with music, is such a beautiful thing, and it's a discipline. Like, sometimes it's hard to give, sometimes it's hard to tithe, sometimes it's hard to be hospitable, and it's hard to be a missionary. So some of these things that we just say, hey, I'm not good at that, so I'm not going to do it. I think as spiritual disciplines, there's the stuff that we're called to do. And so it's kind of like a athlete training, or a musician who spends time practicing. The more that you put yourself into it, the better that you get at those disciplines. And so I think if you understand the reason you're worshiping, and you understand also that even when this doesn't feel good or feel right, I know that this is a discipline, and I'm going to set myself to this task and believing that I will, the understanding that God's worthy regardless whether or not you feel like it. And so it's better to just to start and not to wait to be ready or wait to feel ready. And so I think that's such an important part to understand, that it's the discipline. And we do our best at North Coast Church to make it an enjoyable experience. And I can see that in the way that our teachers teach the Bible too. This there was this one time that Chris Brown and I, one of the teaching pastors and senior pastor at North Coast Church, was driving in the car with me, and he said, "Oh, you're gonna play that little spooky pad underneath as people pray, and in order to manipulate emotions." I'm like, "Oh, you mean like how you tell jokes in order to get people to pay attention to the Bible?" He's like, "Oh."
He's like, yeah, actually, it's exactly like that.
So I believe that music was created with purpose, and I believe that God was the author of music and all creative arts, and he knows how we're made. He knows our physiology, and that our ears and our mind and our heart are connected. And so those things, with melody, how we can remember something because of a melody of a song and the rhythm of a song and the lyrics of a song, with melody, rhythm, and lyrics, we're able to coordinate a group effort in worship. And I think that is so special. And that's what makes that corporate worship such an important experience for the Christian life. That I'm not usually shouting on the top of my lungs out here on my porch, like, God is worthy of all worship. He's worthy to be praised. But I do that in a corporate setting with 600 people.
Yeah.
And it feels natural because it's a group effort where we are corporately worshiping with modern music and with hopefully good production, and so all of that stuff, we put ourselves to the task to say, let's make this excellent for God, who is worthy of it, and enjoyable for those that are going to be using it as their worship expression.
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, just as we wrap up, maybe you could speak directly to NineTen. How do you worship in this season? It's such a weird time where we don't gather together, right? And to your point, I'm not standing in my living room feeling the same emotion that I do in the 910 room, or when we're at camp or at the Jordan for me on Thursday nights or on a weekend service. How do you do that well in this season? Worship a God, like you said, that whether I feel like it or not is worthy of that worship. But that's, if I'm being totally honest, it's kind of awkward right now. We've been doing, Michaela Torres is our worship leader right now, and she's been killing it. It's been so fun.
Michaela is so good.
Oh, she's so rad and loves the Lord so well and walks with him so closely. And it's fun to watch. Like you said, I genuinely feel and see that when Michaela is leading me in worship, she's worshiping, and it's just the rawest expression of that. And she's been doing such a good job of giving us these 8 to 10 minute worship sets, but it's still hard. It's hard to engage with that. Maybe just some tips and tricks there for our 910 students and honestly for me, of how do we worship in this season?
Yeah, I think a lot comes to question in this season. And what I love, and something that we actually were talking about earlier today on a Zoom call in sermon prep, is that the season of pandemic is not the first season of pandemic that our God has taken his people through. So from plagues in the Old Testament, and for whatever plagues that throughout all the New Testament, like this, this happens, and God is not a stranger to this kind of environment, and his people have been faithful to rise up. And it might be a time of sharpening for others, and maybe a time for falling away of others, which is such a bummer. And I hope that's not any of the stories that happens for the students in 910. Because I want to challenge you students to hold on to the idea that the ministry of worship and the ministry that we are called to do is unto Jesus. And so these songs, hopefully they're bringing you comfort, and hopefully the presence of God is washing upon you as the comforter that our God is. And the verse that says we're under hidden beneath the shadow of his wing, and there's a safety there, and we're to enjoy who our God is during the season. But our job is not to comfort ourselves. Our job is not to make ourselves to feel better. Our job is to minister to God. And so that ministry unto God is done through, for me, it's singing and worship and the way that I live my life. But I love expressing my adoration and God's worthiness. And that doesn't change. That hasn't shifted. And so even though our soundtrack might look different, or our environment that we're worshiping is adjusted, we have to be nimble as worshipers and to say, okay, what does it look like now? I'm not taking a break from being a worshiper. That's not possible as a Christian,
right.
And so
or as a human, right?
Yeah.
Like we say that all the time in NineTen.
Yeah.
We just say worship is not something you do, it's something you are.
Right.
And my fear is in this season, if we stop worshiping God, and granted, worship can be more than just music, but if we stop giving him our attention, then that attention is going to go elsewhere, and we will worship. It's just a question of who or what.
Right. Yeah, to think of how much time we're spending on our phones right now. And it's like, how much portion of it are we actually giving that to God, and to think about that as an idol is scary, because I kind of need it right now to feel okay, and
Right.
So like those practices that we should take on as Christians right now should be something that we're sharpening and getting better at, and becoming a daily worshiper without a worship leader leading you through that. And I think that this challenging season, there's a C.S. Lewis quote about rings in a tree. I can't recall the actual quote. I'm gonna look it up.
Just Google C.S. Lewis rings in tree.
C.S. Lewis.
It's always a C.S. Lewis quote.
Tree.
I got called out this morning, and we do 9:10 in the morning, and one of our students, Trevor Norris, he called me out, and he's like, "You only ever quote C.S. Lewis." And I was like, well, maybe there's something to that. Did you find it?
Oh no. I'm gonna recall it wrong, I think, but
give us the Polfer version.
Yeah, okay. So when you chop down a tree, you can see the rings of the life of that tree, and like you can see moments in environment changes in those rings, where you can see, oh, hey, there must have been a fire at this time, or this must have been a little bit of disease for the plant life during this season. And to open up the Christian at the end of our lives and to say, okay, that was the coronavirus ring, where our life was totally different. We were unsettled pretty much permanently, not allowed to do what we're expecting we're going to be able to do. Like all of those, like we're coming at the end of the school year right now, and it's probably bananas for your 9/10 graders. And to think of all those expectations that we're having, so to recognize this season as a little bit of suffering, and to say, okay, how am I going to do that well? How am I going to be better? How is this tree ring of my life of this past month, and who knows how much longer this is going to go? How did I spend it? And did I enjoy God every day of it, resting in the shadow of his wing, enjoying his safety and his comfort, and giving him worship that he is worthy of, and due his name? And so, like, hopefully that's what we're doing with this time. And so if it's cool. Hard to worship right now, get better at it.
Right. But how rad would it be if we all, this kind of sounds weird, but became like independent worshipers and didn't need a worship leader to lead us into worship? And then when this was over, to your point, coming back together corporately, not needing somebody up front to lead you into it, but just the blessing and the privilege of having somebody who gets to lead us into that. And then we're all these independent worshipers coming together to worship God. Like that gives me like freaking goosebumps.
That's so good.
Getting so excited for that. Oh man, that's awesome. Dang, Paul. Well, dude, we love you so much as a 910
Yeah.
community. Thanks
Well,
for just the little bits of silliness and goofiness that you've done with T6P6, and then just worship experiences that we get to have, whether it be in the Edge with families or the Jordan someday for our 9th and 10th graders, or following along on social media, Good Friday, big church right now virtually. You just bless us in so many ways. So
oh,
thank
man.
you. We love you a ton, and thanks for joining us on Fireside Chats.
Thank you. Honored, man. And so grateful for your students. Bless up.
Yeah.